What I love is that I'm speaking to you on World Radio Day, and that's where we know each
Oh,
other from, right? How
yeah.
crazy. I realized this morning only, when folks were posting about it, and I kind of shared my own memories of starting on the 4th of October 2013, starting my first ever show on 702 and overnight. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget the day because, it was daunting. It was 4 hours, no spots at that time of the of the morning. And yeah, now 11, almost 12 years later, here we are. So what comes to mind? The thoughts, the experiences, the memories that come to mind for you when you reflect on your own radio journey?
Um, I think it was one of my favorite jobs I had, and it's because of the little room for error there is.
Yeah.
It teaches you like a real great accuracy, fast thinking on your feet. Especially in talk radio, I would find myself after a show feeling a bit dizzy, like when all this adrenaline that you had for those 3 hours.
Yes.
Um, that's just like such an addictive feel. I mean, I started in radio at Bush Radio Community Station where you did everything. Um,
Yes.
and so that has been the story of my career throughout, where it's like I've got to be a 360 person. And it's only something that radio really can teach you, because if you're working community radio and your presenter is sick, you're the presenter. And I never thought that I would get into radio, but because I don't consider myself like I don't have your voice, not so much now, but back then you associate radio with somebody with a really strong voice.
Mm.
So when I think about my journey in radio, is that it made me feel comfortable within my own skin. It made me feel confident. It gave me the ability to go into character when I needed to be whatever serves the listeners and whatever like translates stories to them.
Yeah.
So I think that there will always be this really deep rooted love for producing for radio that I have. I don't know if I would ever be able to go back to it. I suppose I could now in some short form, but yeah, like radio is always a yes for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. I love the point you make about how it forces you to act and think on your feet and get things done. And in many ways, and I prior to actually my debut on 702 in 2013, I produced for about two months or so, right? So nowhere near the experience you have, but I have that experience. And a lot happens behind the scenes. There's a lot that happens behind the mic, yes. And in many ways, you're stuck because it's not like I can, jump into the booth and help make phone calls and get a guest. You're literally stuck there. And when things are crazy, you're watching producers do all sorts of things and you're just stuck and you just keep going and keep talking. I don't struggle with that as aspect because also the
The
lengthy
talking.
4 hour, the talking. I don't struggle with the talking. Because the lengthy 4 hour training prepared one for that, right? When there's no call and it's dry, you just have to keep going. So if for whatever reason it gets dropped and I have to pad for 4 minutes, easy. I think, and maybe as a last point, if you can speak to this, and then we'll get into why it is that I asked you to hang out this afternoon. If you can really just speak to what you think some of the misconceptions about radio are. So for me, I think what really stands out is how people think, you want to get into radio and it's about you. You're right, you the person, and you're on air. And that it's seamless. We just get there, we switch in the mic and we start talking, but there's so much prep. There could be technical glitches. A guest drops you minutes before the interview. There's all of this other stuff, right? And then the clock is saying, hey, listen, we have to keep moving, but then also not recognizing that it really is it's about the people who are tuning in, whether in their car, in their bedroom, and so on. And I think really I think a lot of the shortcomings that we experience today in the industry is that people come into it, this is how I'm going to get famous. I've got things to say. Everybody must listen to me. And there's so much more that goes into it where, if anything, I think you're the least important person here. It's about how do we get the relevant information to the people who are listening to us. That's one. I have several others, but that's one that's top of mind, which I think is missing really in the space we're in now. For you, what do you think some of the misconceptions on what people have gotten wrong really about the purpose and the power of the platform and the medium that is radio?
I think a lot of people think it's easy, and it really is one of the most difficult jobs within content, and storytelling and journalism. Like it's a really, really difficult one. Like you have to have a finger on the pulse of everything. You have to be ahead of people, and also to be able to respond with the much needed context or information that people would require. Like you really have to think for people ahead, which is really rough if you think about it. Like, so that means that you really have to be engaged with your audience.
Yeah.
You have to listen to them when they call in, have those long conversations to kind of understand the community that you're working in and the things that are relevant for them. And I think those are the things that people don't really think about, that it really takes. You don't just call people and put them on air. I guess you can, but if you really care about your audience, and if you really care about the impact that you can make, then you'll invest the time to really mold your stories in a very digestible, simple, easy way. I think a lot of people get that wrong quite often, where it's about wanting to sound smart, and the perception of what you think, how you should present yourself on air, as opposed to just seeing yourself as a vessel and as a voice that serves people, that helps people get context about this crazy world that we are spinning in. Like we're spinning in this world, like not knowing which way to go. Like nobody tell you. You have various people who are responsible for you, like government, your counselors, and those people who have their own agendas. And so our role is really to then give context to people and to make it all make sense. And I think people don't think about it in that way. And a lot of people that are on air do this for fame. It's instant fame. It's really instant fame. So they don't also think about that big responsibility you have to your audience.
No, absolutely. And I think it allows us to segue nicely into the conversation I'd like us to have this afternoon about figuring your work life in particular out, right? And using all of these different and unique elements. At some point, we thought about our work careers that we would study, you get a job, maybe hang out a couple of years, not like our parents who, could do 25, 30, 35 years in the same job, but, get a decent job, make good money, move on, right? But still the same within the field that you studied, and that's how it would be. But then you quickly realize, and working in media also helps you realize that one, the world is a lot bigger than I think what we're exposed to in school. It's a lot more interesting. And if anything, people like yourself and I are likely going to be bored in like a regular job where we wake up and go to the office and end the day. Talk a bit about how you figured out that you could freelance, have a lot of flexibility, have a lot of freedom, right? And have the discipline that's required to still earn a living, do what you want to be doing, work with the sort of clients you want to be working with, have a balance up, but still be a professional who has to do adult things and earn a living and pay your bill and so on. And I'm kind of starting here, but I'm hoping you walk us back to when you kind of realize, I'm going to try this out, and then the journey towards figuring out and making it work as you're doing now.
Feeling stuck was the big push for me. I felt a bit stuck and stifled in my career because, like you say, we're told that there's this very linear path that you're supposed to follow in terms of your career, making a living. And I felt that I was unhappy with my life and that I wasn't feeling fulfilled anymore. And so I was now feeling bitter about the responsibilities that come with life, like bills. Like, where it's like, I'm so deeply unhappy in order to pay for my car. I'm unhappy so that I can pay for my house and those things. And I then figured out that it doesn't matter where I'm going to go next. This feeling is going to constantly be there because it's been following me for a while.
Yeah.
Where I was confused about the next steps for my career. And I've never been confused about the next steps for my career. I've always been the 5-year plan girl, got it all figured out, and then I go for it and I get it. But suddenly I didn't have a 5-year plan. I didn't feel motivated for a 5-year plan. Like all those things were out of the way. And so I went from journalism into corporate, and I experienced all the things people say about corporate SA. And then I was like, I can't go back to media because I don't think that we're on the same page of how South African media should function, And so I thought like, oh no, like I'm gonna be on loop here and unhappy. So I decided to just bet on myself and take a break. I did not think about becoming a freelancer. I thought, let me take a break, because when you're on the hamster wheel, there really isn't a second to think. Let me take a break and then keep an eye out for jobs, see if there's anything exciting, or anything that comes, And then things did come, but nothing felt like it would fulfill me. And then a friend of mine said to me, she's like, why don't we put together a portfolio for you? We put all your skills together, get a website, and then just freelance. So then I thought, okay, cool, let me freelance for a while, so that I'm ahead of my savings running out. And then I started like WhatsApping my portfolio to contacts and people within the industry. Be it media, be it comms, or the people that are core to opportunities with my skills. And then one of them were like, okay, cool. And then I just, based off of all that investment, let me not say it just happened to me. I think that all those years, 15 years or so, very old, as were investments in where I am today. And I think that's what made freelancing a bit easier for me than for some, is because I've always taken my career very seriously. Everything I do has to be of excellence, and I'm very passionate about that. And so people know me for being professional and thinking outside of the box. And so I think the investment over the years in my career and in myself in that way, what made this path quite easier for me. And so one said, like, you have to register a business, it's easier, blah, blah, blah. And I'm a 1-year-old little business baby. That's like, yeah, that's doing really well. And it's because I show up every day, because now I have to show up for myself the same way I showed up for others to make their businesses thrive. Yeah. So I have to do it times some for myself now.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk a moment in a moment about what is the drive behind it, because like you're saying, you don't have a boss who's waiting to see whether or not you in on time and you're doing the work. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done, and that's that, right? You have to be accountable to yourself. But you make such an important point about the investment and building skills happens way, way, way before even this becomes an option, right? Where you're like, all right, let me figure out what I can do. I can freelance and so on. It started a long time ago.
Yeah.
When would you say that was, right? Because I could argue it even happens, I think at varsity or even in your last few years of school, where you're already thinking about life beyond where you are. And if you have the right mentors around you, they start kind of planting seeds on, if you focus on this or you're really good at this, if you build on it, you can become something. How far back would you take it in terms of the investment in building your toolkit, your skill set?
Oh, when I was in high school, like I knew that I wanted to go into journalism. And so back then, I already had mentors. I was in high school when I met Derek Watts, and he was like 15, 16, and I was like very forward and was like, I love what you do. I want to do that someday. And he gave me his number and his email address and kept in touch with me over the years. And I would like watch an insert on Carte Blanche and mail him about it or message him about it. And he was always really kind with his time, and helping to shape me and prepare me for the industry. And so I knew because that I wanted to be a journalist. So I was already very invested in reading the news and watching the news. My dad and I he used to bring the Times when it just came out. He would bring the Times at night and we would discuss like a Justice Malala's column and debate it, because he's like, you've got to be prepared. We can't send you to Rhodes, we can't send you to a private school, but you have to be able to compete in those spaces. And so he really prepped me and coached me into being an analytical and more critical thinker about what's happening in the world. And so that helped. Constantly writing and being in an imaginary world, I suppose, prepped me for that. And also during my school holidays, I was an intern at magazines and newspapers in Cape Town, where I would spend my time, because I was so determined to be able to not walk into a room and feel confused about what's happening, or feeling small because of where I come from, or people making me feel small because of where I come from. And so the investment happened that time already, because I knew who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be. Yeah.
So talk a bit about not wanting to be made to feel somehow because of where you come from. Do you want to share a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Balha, which is Cape Flats. And I can't think of a single person that was around me that had a career. Like our parents all worked in factories, it's either textile or printing. And so there wasn't opportunities for me that is the same kind of opportunities for private school kids, for example. But my teachers were very invested at my school in helping me sign up for programs, extramural programs outside of the school, where it's like debating and things like that, as support. And so that helped for me to feel somewhat prepared for being around other people. The one thing I wasn't prepared for, though, because of where I came from, was confidence in white spaces. And so we know what it looks like in Cape Town. If your dad works in a factory and your mom works in a factory, and now you're in an equal to a white person, I think nothing prepared me for that. I wasn't prepared for that bit, and that was the one thing that did make me trip up, because of the circumstances within which we are raised in Cape Town, and also just how separated we are, and all races and cultures are in fish bowls there. And so it's like my first interaction with white people like that. And that really tripped me up, because we don't sound alike. We don't look at the world from the same view. And when you're debating things that are happening within the news, that are happening in communities where you come from, it's quite jarring and triggering to have those conversations, especially in a newsroom, where you're debating various people's perceptions of the real world. And so that was the most difficult part for me, going from tech to the workplace, and then having to navigate that world on my own, because it's either that you're going to be a suck up or you're going to be the problem. It's
There's no
like
middle. There's no middle. It's either or. Yes.
there's no middle at all.
Yeah, sure.
But again, I had some bosses who were conscious about those things and really helped to soothe me through, so to say, in getting comfortable within the working environment, because it wasn't just like, oh, it's my first job, I've got jitters. It's like all the other things that comes with it, with being a Black person, yeah, in this very, very white space where it's like you are two colored people. There's no Black people there besides, I mean, I'm sure that the person identified as colored, but like there's the two of you, and then there's all these white people that are your equals, but by naturally act like a superior. And so it's like, now you have to get a voice. So I think finding the right mentors made such a big difference, where it's not just about mentoring me about my career, but it's about mentoring me about the cultural difficulties that you now face in these spaces too, and then the ripple effect it has on you when it comes to your work, because we work in an industry where you have to be invested in everything that you do. It takes everything out of you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do you think if you were to start, if you were starting your career now, right, in the South Africa, in the world of today, that the kind of the same issues and fears, thinking about how people perceive you because of where you're from and how you speak and perceptions, and do you think you would have a similar experience? And I ask this because there's a lot that's different now, right? So when working with younger women in particular, I try kind of put myself in their shoes and understand what some of the issues and the challenges could be. But I'm always struck by how similar they are. And it could be a failure of, I mean, and we've got all conversations about Swallow and 30 years of democracy and so on, and how so much has changed, but in many ways a lot hasn't. In some respects, for people, it's harder today because of the many challenges that are compounded by how heavily racist and racialized our society, our societies are in general. And there's so much pressure to figure things out. Whereas I think in some ways things were a bit similar for us, but also hard in different ways. And for this generation, it's hard in different ways, but it's still hard and it's still similar issues, just perhaps showing up and being dealt with differently. I mean, how do you assess that? Like, so from your own experience and what you had to think about, if you had to start your career, your professional life now, do you think the same things or similar things would be what you need to navigate and deal with?
Well, Gen Z doesn't care as much as we do. Their world is very different. It's a lot more integrated, right? Than ours were. And they have a lot more confidence to speak up for themselves. We inherited our parents' baggage, post-apartheid baggage, and their feelings. Because when I had conversations with my family or my parents about experiencing racism in the workplace, their natural response is for you to be humble. They're not going. It's not for you to fight or speak up. It's just like, you're gonna lose your, like, the terror of, and I'm just, we're so different in our approach, where I cannot sit uncomfortably if somebody says something that I find to be an issue or racist or just plain old ignorant. I'm going to tell them where, naturally my parents would be like, can you simmer down? And I think Gen Z would never let themselves be told to make themselves smaller in spaces.
Yeah.
So I see how they navigate this world with such confidence and vigor, that I'm jealous I'm not part of that group, but they also have the same issues or similar issues that we did. Because I find now that people are a lot more blatant about discrimination.
Yes.
And it could be just about how we're in a digital world right now, but people are a lot more blatant about it. And so I love the energy that where they come with, which is like speaking out for themselves, regardless of where, when, and who. If they need to speak up, they speak up. So they have that disadvantage of it being a lot more in your face than we did, where people were whispering.
Yeah.
About it. I'm making myself sound very old, but I see over the years they really do what they want to do, and they take chances and they are brave. So I think it's just for us to be a support system and offer mentorship and guidance to just keep them grounded, I suppose, in a way, as they navigate the world, because the world they're navigating is very, very different from the one that we navigated. I think we're still at the stage where we can kind of like experience what they do and what they have to experience. But I have so many young people like you that calls me all the time to ask for advice or to say there's this issue in the workplace, like how do I navigate it where I feel empowered and don't feel the chokehold by my responsibilities, so that's open dialogue that I think that must absolutely be there for them. And then the one after them is just going to be even more great,
Absolutely. The gendered nature also of it, because I think as with it is with us as well, guys can certainly get away with things that many of us can't get away with. And let me reference media again, right? If you think about all of the shock jocks that we've had in the country, all dudes, because there are things that some of those guys have gotten away with that a woman couldn't dream of getting away with. I think we've had people who push the who try and push the envelope a bit, but I think there's very quickly a recognition that there's some dude in power who needs to sanction it, and he's going to sanction it because he's one of the guys. So he's going to sanction it for the guys, but it's a different conversation for women. And so I'm using a very particular example that is in media and radio broadcasting in particular, but obviously corporate, it looks different as well. Sport, it looks different, whether it's Serena, who's expressing herself passionately, frustrated about a point, whacks her racket on the court, how that's assessed versus when Djokovic does the exact same thing, even worse, actually. When he had a super tennis player, and the conversation around that is very different. Exact same incident, but viewed very differently. What are your thoughts about how conscious women should be about that sort of thing? Is there a way to prepare for the potential ostracization, being othered, being left out, because you don't fit this is how women should behave? And of course, Black women, very different from what's expected of white women. Is there any way to prepare for that, or is it about being conscious of it early on, and then just learning how to deal with it when confronted with that?
You know, I found, so in newsrooms, and I think in media in general, and you probably would have seen like what the top looks like. So it's very, there's men, and then there's the one woman whose role is to be the doer.
Yes.
It's how it's structured across newsrooms, and then people like myself who's been in that position of authority is very easily told about when you're upset about something, or you're debating something, or you're raising an issue, that you must be on your period. Like I've had someone actually say that.
Good grief. Sure.
You know, and then when I react to that, then I'm overreacting now. Now I'm emotional, and I'm everything but that. So when a man does that, he's just expressing himself. He's just being passionate, you know.
Passionate. Yeah.
I had a woman who was my boss. She was the MD, and she said, when I told her she's being passive aggressive and I don't like it, she told me she's just speaking passionately. So now I'm like, now you're also insulting my intelligence to not know the difference between passion and being passive aggressive. But it is that thing of feeling confident to speak up for yourself. And I think it's something that I've learned over the years.
Yeah.
And so when I was in the newsroom, I always made sure that the interns, especially girls, sat around me, and I'd be like, watch that one, watch that one, watch that one.
Yeah.
It'd be like, because you don't want them to feel surprised. You don't want them to feel that they are alone. You don't want them to feel like if they speak up for themselves that they're unsupported.
Yeah.
There are many times where something makes you feel uncomfortable, and you're automatically made to feel as if you're looking for trouble, or you being a problem, or you're overreacting, or you're overanalyzing things. And it's just like, please know that when this person does A, B, C, and D, that you're not crazy. And it makes it a more comfortable and working environment for them, where all they can do is be their best within working, without having to be bothered by gender politics. And because gender politics is really not something that we ever going to get rid of. I feel like it probably will get worse as the structures are changed.
Oh my goodness.
Because we don't have a lot, because our men will have a lot less to hold on to in the workplace, you know? And so that's when it becomes a little bit more tricky and more aggressive, I suppose. But I truly believe that there needs to be like really structured support systems within the working environments, particularly for young people, particularly for Black people. So at the agency that I worked at, like I had a group of young people where we often met, and it was like, listen, like when they talk about a seat at the table, like it's not a comfortable thing, and I really don't enjoy that term, but because I'm there, it's my responsibility to speak for you. So know that when there's an issue, you can openly speak. And if it is that you just need support, sure, I'm here to listen. If it is that you need somebody to help you speak out, or help you craft how to speak out in this environment, for sure, but just know that you have support. So
yeah,
the whole DE&I, you know, diversity and inequality in the work environment has died out because the trend is now past. But I think more of those things need to happen in the workplace, where there's this consciousness about the disadvantages that Black people face, that Black women face, and all these various other communities. The queer community also face, like, let's have support systems there, so that when people walk into the working space, they can be their best confident selves and get the most out of their day, and everybody wins. But again, even those things are seen as causing problems because we're not allowed to share feelings unless we're asked. So yeah, like I think that the encouragement of these groups and us who's been through it and who's seen it all, forming these communities around these young people is really necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Early on when my career, I always kind of take it back to corporate, but prior to that, it was very short media stint, so print, did a bit of PR, and then really it took off when I was with a multinational professional services organization, and then moving more full-time into media and radio in particular. And one thing that was drummed into me very early on was, and you mentioned this earlier as well, is be excellent, be good, be brilliant, right? Don't make people now say, but yes, we hear she wants to fight this cause and this is what she cares about, but she doesn't submit things on time, or she's not performing, she's not, right? So it was drumming quite early enough that make sure that that's not questioned, that you're competent, that you're doing what you need to do. But there's also an important aspect, and from what I've seen, you do this very, very well, is understanding the game and then playing the game well, right? Because being brilliant, being the smartest in the room, being the most well-prepared in the room, sadly, is not enough. You need to know how to play the game. I promise you, when the shoe dropped on that, I was, oh my word, really? I've been working so hard at being exceptional. I'll say the smartest thing in the room. Great. But you've got to play the game, whatever that game is in the space that you're at. So talk a bit about playing the game. First, figuring out what the game is, knowing who the players are, and then playing.
So generally people think that I'm moody or upset because I'm sitting quiet in the room. But what I'm really doing is observing people and observing their behaviors and who's who in the zoo.
Yeah.
And what I did find very early on in my career is that white men are the mentors to have if you want to climb. And I identified some who understood where I come from, who saw my excellence and who saw my potential, and then who gave me the necessary support. I'm not going to encourage people like go find a white male mentor, but I did, and it made a real big difference in my career because I understood then how they think, and I understood what, despite me being very clear about not wanting to change myself, in terms of how I show up as a Black woman, how I show up as Rhodé in this environment, not being very clear, I will never change that. That's me, it's my foundation, it's my core, it's who I am. But you gotta know, like you say, you gotta know how to play the game. Yeah. And the people who are the main chess players are them. And there might be other people, but mostly in my experience, it has been white men. And so they have taught me a lot about how to navigate, and Black men too. When I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated, like it's been this amount of years and I haven't received an increase or promotion, blah, blah, blah. The way they've taught me and told me how to play the chess game, like really did make such a big difference. But I was up for the task and I was excellent, right? I wasn't dead weight. So understanding the room really does influence so much, so that you know who to speak to, who not to speak to, when you should be saying what and when not, like those type of things really influenced how I moved in the workplace. It didn't influence me as a person because I still enjoy going to sleep peacefully. But I think the real reason why I started feeling stifled in the media industry is because the level then that I wanted to move to, and the level that I was moving to, required a certain amount of ruthlessness that I wasn't keen on.
Mm.
And that's how it works in
Oh,
be it
yeah.
that it's media. But if you're moving up media in the corporate world, like you're moving up in the office outside of the newsroom as a storyteller, like there's a certain amount of ruthlessness and politics that happens in the corporate space
Yeah.
that you really would then need to not feel guilty about. And I just couldn't do that. You know, I couldn't be that person that's ruthless like that. Millionaires are ruthless. Hopefully I'll become a millionaire in a different way. But yeah,
Mm.
being very clear about who I am,
Yeah.
and then bringing in what is the expectations about how you navigate this world, um, made such a big difference in my career decisions.
Mm. 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 Is there some sort of I think I've spoken to many women who do important work, have access to power, and often just how uncomfortable they are with power, or uncomfortable um we can be with the kind of the tough decisions, but they have to be made, right? Like once we recognize that, um sure, we can influence this level, maybe this level as well. But there's a particular level where you we need to reach so that the impact that we want to make goes that much further, right? Um, Whether it's looking to take on very difficult political roles, which ordinarily people would avoid because of how what happens when you're there. But there is that belief, and I think it can be challenged to say, when you're your owner there, then things should in fact should begin to start changing for the good, for our good broadly. There are cases where we've had Black women in powerful positions, and whatever battles they were facing, the change that we were hoping to see just didn't come down to us. But that doesn't mean it must end there. It just means more and more and more and more of us need to be pushing for that. So I wonder whether it's an obligation. It's an obligation for us to do more to occupy those spaces, to take the heat, figure out how it is that we must navigate the space, because there's a longer term plan that we're working towards.
Yeah, it's either you choose yourself or you choose myself and everyone behind me. Those are your two options.
Yeah.
But I've seen how that space is so unprotected for those women.
Yeah.
And I've also seen women who make you believe that they are there for you, but they really are using you like as for themselves to move ahead. I've seen all various versions of it. But I also have grace for them because I understand how hard it is to move up. And so you have these tough moral decisions to make where some will feel responsible for the next batch of women behind them, and then others will be like, you're on your own. And that's fair. That's how their decision on how they want to play it. But what I find surprising and a little bit sad is when unless you're really privileged, you won't get certain support from women who are like the CEOs and those things, unless you come from privilege or you have access to those people. And those are the people that really sit with the knowledge of how to get there, how to motivate yourself, how to cultivate good leadership skills. We don't have enough of those. I don't know if, like that book Lean In, that's very popular. It's like like woman who was in tech environment who talks about what it was like for her to navigate it. Now she's a white woman, but so she found difficulties as a woman to navigate that world. And so she started this network that they send newsletters, they have conferences, they have webcasts and all these things to offer people support and opportunity to learn, like especially women. And there's such a big need in our society to give that kind of support to young women, where they feel seen, heard, leadership skills are cultivated. Somebody says, oh, like identifies them, identifies what they're great at, and then connects them. My career has allowed me the opportunity to have access to those people. But I think if I was just like this girl in Belhar, probably gonna think it's a crazy person who's reaching out to me. You know, like, what do you want? Like, I don't even know if you really have that kind of potential, or maybe it's just a dream. Do you have the drive to accomplish these dreams? So networks are important outside of our groups, you know, and by that I mean like people who can access you easily. And the same for women in powerful positions is what kind, like, I don't even know what kind of support they have. I see a lot of those women being unsupported, being the doers, like I said earlier. And when somebody needs to get cut, that's who they cut. Men really do in the work environment, they look out for each other.
Yeah.
Naturally, they will never call each other out. They do not call each other out, but they will, and they will show up for that person who is really the dead weight in the deep, 100% passionately.
Wow.
And
yeah,
us, it's, in my experience, it hasn't always been that way.
Sadly.
Sadly, yeah.
I hope we'll change it. I think there are certainly pockets of change. The media is a tough space. It's different, and I think more can be done on that front. So coming back then to managing yourself, and we've spoken a bit about just be excellent, get the basics right, and then strive to do more. Be competent, right? Empower yourself, read up stuff. So we've kind of spoken about that. Then there's the other aspects as well that one has to make sure you have right. And this is whether you going to be freelancing and having a lot more flexibility, or even working in bigger organizations. Let's talk a bit about, let's go back to that point. You started talking about that when we started the conversation, that you need to show up, you need to be on time and push yourself when there isn't a boss or a manager that you would need to account to.
I was never a morning person until now. Like, I had to become a morning person. I needed to get up and show up. And so I did a whole lifestyle change where I get up in the morning and I'm one of those annoying first people at the gym. And it gets me pumping, it gets me moving. Like, once you've been at the gym, you really cannot go back to bed. Like,
yeah.
If you're a consultant or you're a freelancer, it's okay for you to sleep until you wake up.
Already,
like,
yes.
You're ready. And many people will think that's the luxury of it. I felt that it would give me a very big disadvantage. Like, I don't have staff. I have to self-motivate. And so get to the gym, make sure my body's physically strong. My brain is functioning, I'm awake. And then start my day planning what my day looks like. If it is calling people, emailing people, looking for clients, etc., it's part of my day. Like, I have a whole planner of how I plan what I'm gonna do for the week, and I plan it ahead so that I feel in control. So, because there's nobody that tells you like, oh, this is the vision. There's no, like the vision.
Yeah. The
And
mission of the organization, it's you.
yeah, yeah. So I needed to change everything about how I functioned. And it's self-motivating. I have a friend who also is a consultant, and she and I are each other's support systems. So it is giving each other ideas, sharing resources, identifying opportunities, and things like that. That also helped me because she's been through this before, where she also just started her own business and had to figure it out. And so she always tells me, she's like, I made all the mistakes so you don't have to. So so please reach out to me when you need something. And so that has helped me to have somebody who is a peer who has done this before, can offer guidance. So that I don't feel like I'm rowing my boat round and round and round and round, get demotivated or frustrated. As a freelancer, I was very clear that I'm not going to be the hustling freelancer in the sense of chasing a million invoices. I was like, I'm going to set myself up as a proper business. I'm going to get contracts so that I have financial security, because that is our biggest stress as a freelancer, can be financial security. So I was like, do not want to feel unstable, worrisome, and so forth, because then it will also affect other aspects of my life. So I really needed to think about what are the things that would worry me and how can I counter and those worries. What are the things that I can put in place to make sure that I, for example, get a financial planner that helps me with my taxes, and just like I'm my own retired annuity now. Like I don't have that cost to company stuff. Like, how do I yeah, I'm a big adult. Like, how do I take care of all those things? And so I function in that way where it's like I have to keep myself goal orientated and motivated, but also it's not just about finances. It's also about my own mental health. It's about having a healthy and strong body. And then I'm taking care of things, Like it really has made such a big difference to not feel slumpy during the day, feel tired, or feel like a sloth. You could easily feel like a sloth if you don't take care of yourself. So I really had to think about what I wanted my life to be like, what makes me happy, what offers me security, and then put those things in place. And it's also, yeah, because I had a support and people who could tell me about what their experiences were like also helped so much. In me feeling like, okay, I'm probably never going to go back to a 9 to 5. Like, I can do this, So, yeah, it's just being honest with yourself, I think.
Yeah.
Like being really honest with yourself.
On on going through or trying to get through difficult periods. Some thoughts around that. I mean, yeah, you can't 100% prepare for it, because some of the tough periods are not necessarily work or output related. It could be personal stuff. It could be a breakup.
Yeah.
And if that's not well managed, it could easily affect how effective you are. But also dry season. I mean, we saw during COVID, where people were used to having, business flowing and flowing freely, and then suddenly government says, actually, no, we're gonna shut you in your home, and people had to adjust, and a huge loss in different ways. So thoughts and advice on preparing for, or preparing yourself for the tough times when life really, really throws heavy stuff in your direction?
On the personal side, I'm really good at compartmentalizing things in my life. So I'll be like, cannot deal with this issue right now. I have to work. I'll deal with it at 6 p.m. I'll deal with it the weekend, I really do that. With my friends, even if they text me during the day to check in about something that they know, I'll be like, I'll deal with it tonight, or I'll respond tonight. I do not have the capacity to not show up. I have to show up because I do not have somebody that I can call and be like, hey, can you please do A, B, C, and D for me? I don't feel well today. No, I am the whole staff. So I have to really take care of my life. Like, you have to take care of your life.
Yeah.
Like, not make space for things that will affect your mental health. So there's a certain kind of self-awareness, I think, that has helped me throughout this period, where if I find myself hitting a brick wall personally or however, that I'm able to compartmentalize it and still show up with big joy for my clients, because I interact with them every day.
Yeah.
And they're not my friends. And do you know what I mean? Like, you have to be professional. I cannot be like, oh, I feel so terrible today because I'm going through a breakup or whatever it is. Like, no one cares. They just want to
The work
work.
is
Yeah.
yeah.
However, I must say, I have really compassionate clients. I've been really blessed with having really compassionate and kind clients, and that has made it such a joy for me to wake up every day, do what I need to do. Like, I look forward to interacting with them. I enjoy the work. So I'm very blessed in that way. But then when it comes to, like you said, like a pandemic happens or something happens and it affects your bottom line, one thing that my friend taught me was I'm by nature a frugal person. I'm very frugal. So mostly. But it is to not spend all that money, because it looks nice when the money comes in. It looks really nice.
Right.
But you have to save for the possibility, because while I have the security of clients and not having to hustle for a gig every month, those contracts can also easily be canceled.
Right.
That's fact.
New financial year soon, end of March, things can change. Yeah.
Yeah, things can change. So if things change in their world, it changes in my world. So I put money aside, when I get extra money or whatever, anything, I have money aside that takes care of possible potholes in this world. And so that also too gives me confidence to not stress, because that can also very easily become a stress, where you're like, if this gig ends today or tomorrow, what am I going to do? And so being responsible and countering all those things that will distract me or create doubt is a very good discipline to have in this world. I would love to buy a very expensive bag. I do not need that bag. Let me put that money aside. Like I said earlier on, like, think about all the things that can possibly stress you, things that could possibly go wrong, and then create plans that prevents it, or at least can be a soft landing for you, so that you can enjoy what you're doing. And that was like my very big motivator, is that I wanted to wake up with joy every day. And so all those things that will prevent me from having that joy, how do I prep the best way I can? It's not always possible, but how can you best prep for that instances? Yeah.
You already spoke about networks and having a community, a support system of sorts. I don't know if you want to speak in particular to that. And then I think in addition, the last point is about when you're doing your own thing, you're needing to be managing processes, you're needing to be managing systems. And again, it can go from knowing when to post if you're in the content space to the logistics of getting a particular product delivered, right? So just how to, particularly for people who don't have that skill, like how to cultivate that.
I at like when you've been in this industry, well, in the media industry, on the side of where people ask you for help constantly, people always contacting you for help with publicity and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I had to suck it up and ask people, which was, I think, probably one of the most difficult things. Is I have a really great phone book thanks to my years in journalism, but I'm not the person that's going to call people. I've never asked people for favors or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
And so I needed to suck it up.
Learn how to ask.
And learn how to ask,
Yeah. Ooh,
and
not easy. It's not easy.
it's not easy at all. But again, it is, if I worked for someone else, it would have been easy. And so I really had to tell myself to buck up and show up for myself, as my best self, and even better than I did for others. And because of people's positive experiences of working with me, it was easy for them to say yes. And even if they didn't have opportunities, they shared my details with other people, and opened doors for me. And so, yeah, like I'm less shy about asking for help, or I always make sure that at some point I talk about what I do. Not out of arrogance, but it's you're advertising yourself, you're marketing yourself to people. Like, you constantly have to, yes, switch off, relax, take it easy, but also my opportunities have come from advocating for myself. And
people trust word of mouth, right? Like if somebody says, hey, trust this person, that they more readily will follow up than would be the case if they kind of saw something recommended by Google or something.
Yeah, and then also, then when I work with them, is to show up as my best, excellent self. Always be professional. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And communicate, because sometimes that's not always possible, but to communicate with people and be like, I cannot do this, is that possible, etc. And so it's cultivated a trust relationship with the people that I work with now, whereas they know you're reliable, they know you're professional, they know that I am a stickler for excellence. And so if I send something to them, I really don't want to get it back. I really like to just get it right the first time, where I chase them for deadlines as my clients, like, they love it. And so it has helped me to also function within the boundaries I was very clear about. I don't want to be a money grabber. And the story is very different for everyone, but I didn't want to be a money grabber and just take work for the sake of money. I wanted to take work that I believe in, that I can be confident in, that I can say it with my chest, you know what I mean? Where I'm proud of the work that I do. Yeah. So I've been very, very clear about that. I've been very clear about what are my parameters of negotiating money with people, and not being shy about it, because one of the things you also like, oh, let me be humble, let me be grateful for it, where it's like, no, I come with 15 years of vast experience. And so if you want me, then you will pay for me, Yeah. So I've had to have that confidence in myself and in my skills. And then also continuously upskill myself at the same time. The 9-to-5 work environment, people do these coaching, you get coaching and training opportunities, whatever. So now I've had to be like, okay, what are the skills that I need? What are the things I need to get better at? So when I have free time in my day, one, either check in with my clients to hear if there's anything I can help with. Two, I use the time to upskill myself. So it's it's just this constant rotation of where I have a very clear outline of what my life is like within this position. What is the next big thing in my industry? What do I need to do to get there? Those are the kind of things that I've had to really think about and really do. I did it when I was in the 9 to 5 environment. So what does it look like now? What is investing in myself and in my skills look like now, be it the so-called soft skills or, the more hard ones. But yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's so insightful. It's so insightful. I think as a final point, and as a parting shot to folks who are finding themselves in a space of, all right, either I've been doing this radio thing for too long, I want to try something new, or the path I thought I would have for myself is not how it's playing out. Feeling a bit discouraged even, right? Because there's a lot of that. I think we don't talk enough about that, about how not everybody is all upbeat and, ooh, New Year vibes, let's go. But a lot of people are feeling like, what the hell am I going to do? Some thoughts for them.
I think like when I started, I didn't really know how to use my skills in different spaces. So it's been a welcoming challenge to interpret the skills that I had and I had applied for over a decade in a very particular way to a new way. Yeah. So I had to sit and really think about what is it that I can offer people, and what is the things that will motivate me to get up every day? What are the things that I'm passionate about? Who do I want to be known as? What's my brand about within this new world and in this new environment? And then be steadfast in that commitment. Once you know exactly what you want to do, it's easy to identify where do I find these skills, get a support system, get a network. Once you've identified it, who's the person that can help you to cultivate that skill? Who's the person who can cultivate to get that other skill? Or who are the people that can motivate you? Who are the people that will believe in you, make you feel like they believe in you? And looking after your mental health is very important, where you have to really commit to making sure that you're also showing up for yourself first and foremost, because once you've done the work on yourself, then it's easier for the rest to follow. Having, loving yourself, having self-confidence. There's a lot of times that we don't think how important that is, but it really makes such a big difference in your life and in your career. There's so many young people that are really discouraged by the work that they can't find or the work that they do. And so it is really important to know what are your hard yeses and your hard no's. Because if you feel like you're failing yourself, at the end of the day, you're just gonna dig a bigger hole for yourself. So if it is that you require mental health support, get that support. And then what's the next thing? Do you need somebody to give you financial advice? Read up. There's so many blogs. Was it Maya Fisher French who has a really great blog about finances? Find these spaces and these various supports that you can, so that you can grow. Because in this space, unless you motivate yourself, and even it is to motivate yourself for the next 10 minutes and in the next 10, start somewhere, start small. When I need motivation, I do go onto crazy TikTok motivator, and I watch all those blue chip company CEOs, who's just so excited, And the things that they talk about quite often are not the workplace stuff. It's the self stuff, the inside stuff, and then how that translates out. So do I think they're cuckoo a lot of the times? Absolutely, yes. But there's method in the madness, So if I need to become a more productive person, get a book that helps you become productive. Like really invest in yourself in little and small ways. Like we don't talk enough about how we invest in ourselves in that way. It's all about, and very important, obviously, investing in yourself financially and then responsibilities. And I think that's where a lot of people feel discouraged because you feel like you're in a chokehold with coping financially, which is a big, like I said, it's big and it's important and it can really affect your mental health. But like, just find ways to empower yourself. It's the best advice I can give. It's a long road. That part is a long road, though. That's the difficult one.
Yeah. So helpful, man. Thanks, dude. Much appreciated. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and appreciate you for making time to have a chat with me.
Of course, always.
All right. Awesome. I'm gonna see you soon for coffee. Let's make that
Yes,
happen.
please. Let's do that. Okay.
All right. Thanks, then, Frank. Chat soon.
Okay, bye.